A man died in a ghastly car accident. This is a true life story that happened in Anambra in the eastern part of Nigeria. He died in a car accident, buried, and mourned by his family. But years later, news came from Tanzania. He was alive, married to a beautiful woman, and even had 3 children with her. How can the dead return to live another life in a faraway land? Stay with me till the end, because this story will leave you speechless. Chika was a young man full of life, known across his town in Anambra for his energy and dreams. He was a spare parts dealer, always traveling to buy goods for his shop. On this particular morning, he prepared for another journey to Lagos. The sun was just rising when he packed his bag with money and documents. His mother warned him to be careful.
Son, I want you to take care of yourself. I know this is a big step, but you are ready for it. Call me as soon as you land.
As accidents were common on the road, Chika smiled and promised to return safely with new goods. He boarded a commercial bus filled with other traders heading to Lagos. Everyone chatted loudly, sharing jokes and laughter to ease the long trip. The driver pressed the horn and sped off onto the busy highway. As the journey continued, Chika thought about expanding his shop. He dreamed of becoming the biggest spare parts dealer in the city. In his heart, he prayed quietly for protection on the road. The roads were busy with trailers, buses, and impatient drivers. Passengers shifted nervously whenever the bus overtook a heavy truck, but the driver assured them that he knew the road well. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered even though it was still morning. The rain began to fall heavily, making the road slippery and dangerous. Other vehicles slowed down, but their driver kept speeding. Chika looked out the window and felt uneasy in his spirit. He wanted to caution the driver, but words refused to leave his mouth. Instead, he held tightly to the seat in front of him. The bus swerved suddenly to avoid an oncoming trailer. Passengers screamed, and their hearts pounded in fear. Before they could recover, the bus lost control. It spun violently and crashed into the side rail of the highway. The sound of metal tearing filled the air, mixed with cries of pain. Chika's world went dark in an instant. When rescuers arrived, they found twisted iron and lifeless bodies. Among them was Chika, silent and still as though asleep. The news traveled quickly to Anambra that he was gone forever. When the sad news reached Anambra, his mother collapsed in tears. She couldn't believe her only son had been taken so suddenly. The whole village gathered around her to console her. His father sat in silence, staring blankly into the air. The man who once dreamed of seeing Chika take over the family business was broken. Words failed him. Only deep sighs escaped his lips. Relatives rushed in from different towns when they heard the news. Some refused to believe it until they saw his lifeless body. Grief spread through the compound like a heavy cloud. The day of the burial came, and mourners filled the village. Women wailed loudly, beating their chests in sorrow. Men shook their heads, whispering about how life is vanity. His mother clung to the coffin, refusing to let go. She cried that her son had promised to return with goods. Now he was returning in silence, never to speak again. The pastor prayed over the grave, asking God to grant peace. He reminded everyone that death comes like a thief in the night. Tears flowed freely as sand covered Chika's body. After the burial, the compound felt empty and quiet. Chika's laughter, once echoing in the evenings, was gone. Only the sound of mourning lingered in the air. Friends visited the family to share stories of his kindness. They spoke of how he helped people without seeking reward. Every word made his mother's tears flow even harder. For weeks, the family lived in sorrow and confusion. Meals went untouched, and nights were filled with silence. It felt as though joy had been buried with Chika. His shop in the market remained locked and abandoned. Traders who once admired his energy now spoke of him with pity. Everyone agreed that Chika's death was a great loss. Months passed, and life in the village began to move on. Though the pain of Chika's death lingered, people tried to live again. His family slowly returned to their daily routines. One of Chika's sisters eventually got married. The wedding was filled with both joy and quiet sadness. Everyone wished her happiness, even though her brother was missing. His mother cried at the wedding, remembering how Chika had promised to be there. She looked at the empty chair beside her and sighed deeply. It was a reminder that death had stolen her son. After the celebration, the family tried to find strength. They accepted that Chica's chapter had closed forever. But fate was preparing a twist they could never imagine. One night, his younger sister had a strange dream. In the dream, Chica stood before her, smiling gently. He called her name and stretched out his hands. Chica's sister, Ngozi, was the one having the strange dreams. She was known as a gentle soul, always calm and thoughtful. But these nightly visions began to disturb her peace. In her sleep, she kept seeing her brother standing tall. He would smile at her, but his eyes carried mystery. Each time, he seemed eager to say something important. One night, his voice grew clearer than before. Ngozi, he called, I am coming back. The words echoed in her ears until she awoke. She sat up in bed, breathing heavily in confusion. Her mind tried to convince her it was just a dream, but her heart told her it felt too real. In the morning, Ngozi told her married sister about it. The sister laughed softly and waved it aside. Dreams are only dreams, she said. Ngozi wanted to believe her sister was right. After all, how could the dead return to the living? It sounded impossible and foolish to believe. Still, the words, I am coming back, lingered in her thoughts. They replayed in her mind even when she tried to forget. The voice felt alive, not like a fading memory. At night, she prayed before sleeping, asking God for peace. She begged not to see Chica again in her dreams. Yet, the visions returned stronger than ever. This time, he stood closer as if reaching for her hand. I told you, Ngozi. I am coming back, he repeated firmly. She woke up terrified, sweat dripping from her forehead. Despite everything, Ngozi refused to believe it could be true. She told herself it was grief playing tricks on her mind. And so, she buried the dream in silence. While his family mourned him in Anambra, something strange happened miles away. In Tanzania, a man appeared suddenly on the streets of Dar es Salaam. He was weak, confused, and wore torn clothes. The man was Chica, alive yet unaware of how he got there. Passers-by looked at him curiously, wondering if he was a madman. But he himself was more shocked than anyone else. He touched his body and felt no injury, only tiredness. The last memory he had was the bus swerving off the road. Now he stood in a foreign city, alive and breathing. Days passed, and Chica struggled to survive on the strange streets. He begged for food and slept in corners of the marketplace. Life felt like a dream he couldn't wake up from. One afternoon, while resting under a tree, he heard a soft voice. A young woman approached him, carrying a basket of colorful fabrics. Her name was Amina, a trader in the busy market. Amina noticed his weary eyes and torn appearance. Instead of mocking him like others did, she offered him water. Her kindness was the first light he had seen in days. Chica thanked her, though his voice was shaky and weak. Something in her gaze felt comforting, almost like home. She asked where he came from, but he had no answer. Touched by his helplessness, Amina gave him food to eat. She told him to meet her at the market whenever he was hungry. Her compassion surprised Chica and softened his troubled heart. In the following days, he returned to see her often. They would sit by her fabric stall, sharing stories and laughter. Slowly, he began to feel alive again. Amina admired his humility and the gentleness in his voice. Despite his mystery, she felt drawn to him in a powerful way. Their bond grew, and love began to bloom between them. As time passed, Chica's life began to change mysteriously. Opportunities came his way, and money started flowing into his hands. It was as though unseen forces were guiding his destiny. Soon, he became known in Dar es Salaam as a wealthy trader. He invested wisely and built connections with powerful people. Within a few years, Chica's name commanded respect everywhere. But to Amina, he remained the same humble man she had helped. She still thought of him as the struggling stranger from the street. She had no idea how much wealth he had gathered. One evening, Chica took her hand with a smile. I want to show you something important, he said softly. Curiosity filled her heart as she followed him quietly. They drove through the city, past tall buildings and busy roads. Finally, they arrived at a grand mansion with golden gates. Guards bowed respectfully as soon as they saw Chica. Amina's eyes widened in disbelief as the gates opened. The compound was massive, with shining cars parked neatly. Flowers lined the walkway, and lights glittered like stars. "Welcome home," Chica said with a gentle laugh. Amina gasped and held her chest, unable to speak. She thought she was dreaming, but it was real. Inside the mansion, everything sparkled with luxury and class. Marble floors, golden curtains, and chandeliers filled the rooms. Servants greeted Chica with deep respect, calling him master. Amina turned to him, her mouth still open in shock. "You mean all this belongs to you?" she whispered. Chica only nodded with a calm, knowing smile. That night, Amina could not sleep from the surprise. The man she once fed on the street was actually a rich prince of the city. From that day, her love for him grew even deeper. Days turned into months, and their bond grew unshakable. Amina no longer saw him only as a rich man. She loved the kindness in his heart more than his wealth. One evening, Chica invited her to the garden of his mansion. The moon shone brightly, and the air was filled with music. Servants stood quietly at a distance, watching with smiles. Chica went down on one knee, holding a golden ring. His eyes glistened with emotion as he looked at her. "Amina, will you marry me and be mine forever?" he asked. Amina gasped, her hands trembling as tears filled her eyes. She had never imagined that life would bring her such joy. With a smile, she whispered, "Yes, I will." Cheers erupted from the servants and friends who witnessed it. Chica slipped the ring onto her finger with pride. That moment sealed a new chapter in both their lives. Preparations for the wedding began immediately in Dar es Salaam. The city buzzed with excitement, for everyone knew Chica's name. He was not just rich, but also deeply respected. On the wedding day, the mansion glittered with colors and music. Guests from different parts of Tanzania filled the grand hall. All eyes admired the beauty of Amina in her gown. Chica stood tall, dressed like a king before his bride. When they exchanged vows, applause thundered through the crowd. It was a union blessed by both men and spirits alike. That night, Amina walked into her new life as a wife. She marveled at how a man she once met on the street had transformed her world. Chica, too, was grateful for the love she gave freely. Together, they began their new life in the mansion. Days were filled with laughter, love, and endless dreams. To Amina, it felt like living inside a fairy tale. Months after their marriage, joy entered the mansion again. Amina gave birth to their first child. The whole city celebrated, for Chica was a man of honor. The baby's cry filled the halls with warmth and promise. "This child will carry my name forever," he declared. But as days turned into weeks, Amina noticed something strange. Though Chica had wealth and many friends, no family ever called. Not a mother, not a father, not even a distant cousin. Each time his phone rang, it was always his friends. They would laugh loudly, share drinks, and leave late at night. But never once did Amina hear a family voice. "Chica," she asked one day, "don't you have family somewhere?" He smiled faintly and kissed her forehead. "My family is far away," he whispered, ending the conversation. Amina accepted the answer, but her heart was unsettled. Something about his friends made her uncomfortable in secret. Their presence always left the air cold and heavy. They looked like ordinary men, charming, wealthy, and confident, but their eyes sometimes glowed strangely in the dim light. And when they laughed, it carried an echo that lingered. Amina noticed they never stayed when the baby cried. As soon as the child made a sound, they vanished suddenly. She thought it was coincidence, but it happened every time. At night, she sometimes awoke to hear whispers in the hall. When she peeped, she saw Chica speaking with them in low tones. Yet his lips moved differently, as if speaking another language. Unknown to her, these friends were not men at all. They were spirits from another world, bound to Chica's fate. But Amina, blinded by love, never suspected the truth. One quiet evening, Amina was rocking the baby to sleep. Suddenly, she heard footsteps upstairs, though no one was there. She rushed to check, but the room was empty. At midnight, the chandelier in the living room swayed violently. There was no wind, no storm, yet it moved on its own. Her heart raced as she grabbed her baby tighter. Another night, she heard soft whispers in the nursery. When she entered, the baby was laughing into the empty air. It was as though unseen hands were playing with him. Sometimes, the mirrors in the mansion fogged without reason, and in the mist, she thought she saw faint shadows move, figures that looked like men, standing silently behind her. Terrified, Amina told Chica, "This house is not normal. Strange things are happening. Shadows, whispers, footsteps." Her voice trembled as she begged him to listen. Chica only chuckled, drawing her close in his arms. "My love, you're only tired from caring for the baby. These are just hallucinations born from exhaustion." But Amina knew what she saw and heard. Every night it grew worse, and the mansion felt heavier. Sometimes the walls even creaked as though alive. She noticed that whenever Chica's friends visited, the house grew colder. Doors opened by themselves, candles flickered without wind. Yet Chica acted as though nothing was unusual. One night, she gathered courage to confront him again. "Chica, this house is haunted. I feel it in my bones." But he kissed her lips gently and said, "Hallucinations, my dear." Despite his calm denial, fear tightened its grip on Amina. She began to wonder who her husband truly was, and why his world was surrounded by so many secrets. Amina's fear grew with each passing day in the mansion. One morning, he surprised her with a sealed envelope. Inside was a visa, ticket, and travel papers to Dubai. "Amina," he said warmly, "you need rest, a new environment." Amina's eyes widened, half in joy, half in suspicion. Why now? Why Dubai? Why so suddenly? She wondered. But Chica insisted it was for her happiness and peace. "My love," he whispered, "forget the shadows and noises here. Perhaps it's this house that burdens your heart and mind. Go enjoy yourself in Dubai and you'll see you're fine." Though hesitant, Amina finally agreed to the journey. She thought maybe distance would silence her troubled thoughts. Maybe life abroad would prove Chica right after all. Chica arranged everything with astonishing ease and speed. Within a week, Amina was set to leave Tanzania. Her friends marveled at how fortunate she was. But deep down, Amina still felt unease. The mansion loomed in her memory like a nightmare. And her husband's calmness was stranger than the ghosts. On the night before her departure, Amina awoke suddenly. She thought she heard voices in the hallway again. But this time, they sounded like chanting in a foreign tongue. She rose to investigate, but found the hallway empty. Yet when she turned back, Chica stood behind her. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, unreadable. With a soft smile, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Rest now, my dear. Tomorrow you fly to Dubai." And though his words soothed, Amina's fear only deepened. After 2 weeks in Dubai, Amina and her baby returned. Chica welcomed them warmly at the airport, smiling proudly. His embrace felt safe, his joy almost overwhelming. Back at the mansion, everything seemed perfectly calm. No whispers in the halls, no swaying chandeliers at night. The house was silent as though reborn. For the first time, Amina slept peacefully under that roof. Her baby cooed happily, free from unseen disturbances. The atmosphere was lighter, almost normal. Days passed into weeks, and nothing strange occurred again. No shadows in mirrors, no footsteps in empty rooms. Amina's heart began to relax. She told herself that maybe Chica was right after all. Perhaps it had only been stress and exhaustion before. Her fears slowly melted away. Chica treated her with tenderness and devotion daily. He brought her gifts, laughter, and endless affection. Life with him began to feel like a dream. The baby grew stronger, crawling with joyful energy. Amina busied herself with caring for their little family. Her worries faded into distant memories. Whenever she recalled the strange happenings of the past, she brushed them off with a nervous laugh. Maybe I really was hallucinating, she thought. The mansion, once terrifying, now felt like home. Visitors praised its beauty, and neighbors admired their wealth. Amina started to feel proud of her new life. And with each peaceful day, she forgot a little more. The shadows, the whispers, the cold rooms, all gone. In her heart, happiness replaced fear at last. Not long after her return from Dubai, Amina conceived again. Her joy was full, and Chica celebrated with her. The mansion echoed with laughter and preparations for a new baby. The months of pregnancy passed smoothly without fear. Chica remained loving, always by her side. He spoiled her with care and affection daily. When the time finally came, the city rejoiced with them. Amina gave birth to healthy twins, a boy and a girl. Their cries filled the hospital room with joy. Chica's smile stretched wider than ever before. He carried his son proudly and kissed his daughter gently. For him, it was the perfect blessing. Amina's happiness overflowed as she looked at her children. Her little family was growing stronger and brighter. All the shadows of the past seemed gone forever. The neighbors came to congratulate the wealthy couple. Everyone admired the twins and praised Amina's strength. The mansion now buzzed with celebration and joy. Friends showered them with gifts and warm wishes. The twins were clothed in the finest fabrics of Tanzania. They were seen as children born into wealth and honor. Chica held feasts that lasted for days. Music and dancing filled the compound from morning till night. The entire city knew of his growing dynasty. Amina's heart swelled with gratitude and pride. She thanked God for turning her life into sweetness. Her worries of old seemed like distant illusions. With 3 children and a loving husband by her side, she told herself she was the happiest woman alive. Her life felt complete, peaceful, and blessed. One quiet evening, after putting the twins to sleep, Amina sat beside Chica in the living room. Her heart carried a question she had long suppressed. "Chica," she said softly, her eyes fixed on him, "you've given me everything, wealth, comfort, and children. But tell me, where are you truly from?" Chica hesitated for a moment, his smile fading briefly. Then he answered, "I am from Nigeria and Namber State. The eastern part of Nigeria, that's my true home." Amina's brows furrowed as she leaned closer. "Then why do you never go back there, my husband? You have all it takes, wealth, status, and family." Her tone grew heavier with suspicion and curiosity. "Or is it because you have another wife in Nigeria? A secret life you don't want me to know about?" Chica chuckled uneasily, trying to brush it aside. "My love, you think too much, always imagining stories. Nigeria is behind me now, my life is here." But Amina wasn't satisfied with that answer. Her eyes searched his face for hidden truths. "Even a bird returns home. Why not you, Chica?" He stood and walked toward the window in silence. The mansion's lights cast his shadow tall on the wall. It was clear her words had struck a nerve. Finally, he turned back to her with a forced smile. "My love, stop troubling yourself with questions of the past. Our future is here, not in Nigeria." Yet as he spoke, Amina felt a coldness in his tone. Something unspoken lingered behind his careful words. And in her heart, doubt began to grow again. Chica noticed the growing doubt in Amina's eyes. Her questions about Nigeria refused to fade away. So he devised a plan to silence her suspicions. One evening, he told her, "I will travel to Nigeria. I will prove to you that I have no secrets. Wait for me and you'll see I speak truth." Amina was relieved but insisted on escorting him. She followed him to the busy airport with their children. She watched every move, determined not to be deceived. At the gate, she hugged him tightly, smiling with hope. Chica waved and walked toward the plane entrance. Amina waited until the aircraft finally took off. Her heart calmed as she whispered, "At last he went." She turned around, holding her twins close. She was certain her doubts would now vanish. But what Amina did not know was chilling. Chica had never stepped inside the waiting aircraft. Instead, he slipped away into the shadows of night. While his wife believed he was high in the skies, Chica walked silently toward an old graveyard. The air grew cold as he entered the burial ground. In the graveyard, strange voices echoed in the wind. Shadows gathered as though waiting for his arrival, and Chica's eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight. He stood before a cracked tombstone and knelt slowly. Whispering in Igbo, he called out names unknown to men. The ground beneath him trembled with hidden power. This was where his true life was tied forever. Not to Nigeria, not to Tanzania, not even to Amina, but to the spirits that owned his very existence. The next morning, Amina's phone rang unexpectedly. It was Chica, his voice cheerful and steady. "My love, I have arrived safely in Nigeria, he said. Amina sighed with relief, her doubts melting away. She smiled, whispering, Thank God, now I believe you. Her heart softened toward him once more. Here, talk to my mother, Chika continued gently. He handed the phone to a figure beside him. But in truth, he was still in the graveyard. A voice came on the line, soft and convincing. My daughter, very soon you will come to Anambra. Your husband has no other wife, don't worry. The womanly voice carried warmth and assurance. She added firmly, In our land, no man marries two. We forbid a second wife. Your place is secure. Amina's heart swelled with unexpected comfort. Her fears of betrayal and secrets faded away. She believed she had spoken with her mother-in-law. Thank you, Mama, she said with tears of joy. I only needed to be sure, that's all. She felt peace returning to her troubled spirit. On the other side, Chika smiled in the graveyard. His fellow spirit had played the role perfectly. The deception was strong enough to silence suspicion. That night, Amina prepared food with a lighter heart. She hummed songs as she fed the twins happily. Her mind no longer dwelt on shadows of doubt. And though the mansion still carried a strange silence, Amina now believed it was only her imagination. Chika's trick had brought him peace once again. Weeks passed, and Amina began to notice something strange. Her husband no longer left for work as he used to. Day after day, he remained inside the mansion. At first, she thought he was simply taking a break. But soon, it became clear that he never went anywhere. The mansion became his entire world. Yet what amused Amina most was his endless wealth. No matter how much money she requested from him, Chika would simply walk into a room and return with cash. Take my love, he would say with a smile. Use this for yourself and for the children. The bundles were always fresh and unending. One day, she asked for a very large sum, curious to see if he would hesitate or complain. But within minutes, he returned with the money in hand. Amina stared at the notes, her heart puzzled deeply. Where was this endless river of money flowing from? And why did Chika never step out to earn it? Her mind began to wander into dangerous thoughts. Was her husband involved in hidden deals she knew not of? Or was his wealth tied to something darker? Late at night, she lay awake beside him in silence. The question echoed over and over in her heart. Where does Chika really get his money from? The mansion's silence made her unease heavier. Even the walls seemed to whisper mysteries at night. But Chika only slept peacefully, untouched by worry. And though he smiled by day and gave her riches, Amina's spirit could not shake the gnawing suspicion. Her husband was hiding something far greater than wealth. One morning, their first child ran to Amina excitedly. Mama, I want to go to school like my friends. His eyes shone with eagerness for learning. Chika overheard and nodded with a proud smile. My children must attend the very best school in Tanzania. Nothing less will do for the future I desire. The following week, they visited a prestigious academy in Dar es Salaam. The headmaster gave the school fees with a confident voice. It will cost 5 million Tanzanian shillings per term. Amina's eyes widened in shock at the amount. It was a fortune, enough to shake any family. She wondered if Chika would hesitate this time. But Chika only smiled, stood up calmly and left. Then he returned, carrying neat bundles of cash. Here is the fee, he said, handing it to the headmaster. The man bowed in awe, praising Chika's generosity. Amina stood frozen, her mind struggling for answers. That night, she turned to her husband with curiosity. Where do you get such endless money, Chika? But he only laughed, brushing off her questions again. Chika's first daughter was named Chindima, a bright and curious child. Her eyes always searched for answers beyond the surface. One evening, she sat beside her father with questions in her heart. Daddy, Chindima said softly, tugging at his hand. Where do you work? My friends' fathers take them to their office. Her innocent voice carried a weight Chika could not ignore. She looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes. Why don't you take me to your place of work, Daddy? I want to see where you go and what you do. The words pierced Amina's heart like a sharp blade. For years, she had avoided asking the same question directly. Now, through Chindima, her own hidden curiosity resurfaced. Amina leaned back silently, her thoughts racing in circles. It struck her like thunder. She didn't know her husband's office. All these years, he never mentioned a company name or workplace. She remembered friends boasting about visiting their husbands' offices. But in her own case, she had nothing to say. All she had were endless bundles of money from nowhere. Chika chuckled gently, pulling Chindama closer into his arms. My princess, you will surely see where I work. But right now, Daddy is too busy. He smiled at both Chindama and Amina with calm assurance. When I am less busy, I will take you there myself. You will be proud when you finally see it. Chindama's face lit up with innocent excitement. She believed every word her father spoke without doubt. But Amina's heart was not as easily convinced. Inside her mind, questions swirled like a raging storm. If Chika had nothing to hide, why the delay? And why had he kept this secret from her for so long? One bright Monday morning, Chika decided to personally take Chindama to school. She was happy, holding her father's hand proudly as they walked through the gates. Other parents were also arriving with their children, filling the compound with chatter. Among them was a man named Mzee Juma, a respected priest from the community. He had brought his young son, Baraka, to the same school. Everyone knew Mzee Juma not just for his wisdom, but for his spiritual gift of sight. As soon as Mzee Juma's eyes fell on Chika, his heart skipped a beat. Something about this man radiated a strange, chilling energy. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and wondered if he was hallucinating. Chika looked perfectly normal to everyone else, tall, handsome, and calm. But to Mzee Juma's spiritually open eyes, the truth was clear. He did not see flesh and blood standing there. Instead, he saw a shadow cloaked in human form. The aura around Chika was cold, heavy, and unearthly. It was the aura of the dead, walking among the living. The priest shuddered, gripping his son's hand tighter. No, it cannot be, he whispered under his breath. But the more he looked, the clearer the vision became. To be sure, Mzee Juma whispered a quick prayer under his breath. He raised his spiritual senses higher, hoping it was a mistake. But the revelation only deepened. Chika was indeed a ghost. His heart pounded as he forced a smile for his son. Around him, other parents laughed, talked, and waved at Chika normally. They saw nothing unusual, but Mzee Juma saw what they could not. He thought of walking away quietly and pretending he had seen nothing. But his conscience refused to let him stay silent. A spirit living among men was never a small matter. As he watched Chika kiss Chindama on the forehead and wave goodbye, Mzee Juma's decision grew stronger in his heart. He would find a way to confirm the truth and confront this ghostly father. After dropping his son, Mzee Juma lingered around the school gate. He pretended to be adjusting his robe while watching Chika closely. His curiosity burned stronger. He needed undeniable proof. Gathering courage, Mzee Juma walked straight toward Chika. Brother, good morning, he greeted warmly, extending his hand. Chika smiled faintly and stretched his hand in return. The moment their hands touched, Mzee Juma's body trembled. What he felt was not warm human flesh, but cold emptiness. It was like shaking hands with the wind of the grave. Lo and behold, his suspicion was confirmed instantly. Chika was indeed a ghost, a spirit disguised in human form. The priest quickly withdrew his hand, his eyes widening in shock. How is this possible? Mzee Juma muttered beneath his breath. A ghost, living comfortably among men, raising children? The thought alone was beyond belief, even for him. As his eyes scanned the school compound, another shock hit him. He noticed two other men standing nearby, laughing with Chika. Their auras carried the same cold, heavy presence of the dead. He blinked hard, then whispered another prayer of confirmation. The vision remained unchanged. They were also spirits, not humans. These were Chika's friends, fellow ghosts hiding in plain sight. Mzee Juma's heart pounded as the realization sank deeper. It wasn't just one ghost, but a company of them. And they all mingled freely with living parents and children. He turned away quickly, hiding the fear on his face. If he exposed what he had seen recklessly, danger might follow. Such spirits would never want their secret revealed easily. Walking slowly back to his car, Mzee Juma whispered to himself, "This is not ordinary. The living and the dead are walking together. He knew he had a heavy secret to carry and a choice to make. Mzee Juma sat in his car for a long moment, breathing heavily. The weight of what he had just discovered pressed down on him. Children were learning and playing among parents who were not alive. His first thought was to rush into the principal's office. Maybe if he reported the truth, the school would take action. But then, how would he explain that he had seen ghosts? He knew most people would laugh and call him a madman. Others would say he was jealous of wealthy parents like Chica. No one would believe his spiritual eyes could see beyond the veil. Yet, the safety of the children weighed heavily on his conscience. What if tomorrow these spirits decide to harm someone, he wondered. I cannot keep quiet when the innocent are at risk. Mzee Juma thought of calling a meeting with other church elders. Perhaps they could pray, fast, and seek divine guidance first. This matter was too delicate to handle with ordinary wisdom. Still, another part of him whispered that silence was safer. Chica and his ghostly friends had done nothing harmful so far. In fact, they blended so well that no one suspected anything. But Mzee Juma remembered the coldness of Chica's handshake. The emptiness that lingered in his palm was not of this world. How long could such beings truly live among men peacefully? As he drove away from the school, his mind battled itself. Expose them to the school authority, or remain quiet and pray? Each option carried its own danger and consequence. The image of innocent children laughing in the playground haunted him. He could not risk their lives, even if the ghosts seemed harmless. For their sake, he began to lean toward exposing the truth. He clenched his fists on the steering wheel and made a vow. If it costs me my reputation, so be it. The truth must be told. But he would first seek wisdom on how to reveal it safely. The following day, Mzee Juma returned to the school quietly. He stood at a corner, pretending to read a newspaper. But his sharp eyes scanned the compound, searching for more signs. As parents arrived one after another, his heart grew heavier. He saw more of the same cold aura that surrounded Chica. To his shock, there were not one, but several ghostly parents. First was Mr. Okeke, a tall man from Enugu, Nigeria. He walked his son into class, smiling and greeting cheerfully. But to Mzee Juma's sight, he was only a spirit in disguise. Next was Mama Chisholm, a plump woman from Imo State. She always carried snacks for her daughter, making other children happy. But her aura screamed loudly. She too was among the dead. Then came Mr. Kamau from Kenya, known for his business success. He arrived in a spotless white robe, holding his little boy's hand. But Mzee Juma saw his true form, cold, empty, ghostly. Another was Mrs. Fatu, a Gambian woman who spoke softly. Her daughter was one of the brightest in the entire school. Yet her presence was cloaked in the strange chill of the grave. The last was Mr. Banda from Malawi, tall and well-respected. He greeted everyone loudly, pretending to be full of life. But spiritually, he was just like Chica, a wandering ghost. Mzee Juma's lips trembled as he counted them one by one. 5 ghost parents from different countries, all bringing their children. Their children laughed innocently, unaware of their parents' true nature. The realization shook him to his very core. This was no small matter. It was bigger than Chica alone. An entire network of ghost parents lived secretly among the living. Mzee Juma shut his eyes and whispered a desperate prayer. God, give me wisdom, for this is beyond human understanding. He knew then that exposing them would be far more dangerous. The following morning, the school was as busy as always. Amina arrived gracefully, holding little Chindima by the hand. She smiled warmly at other parents while leading her daughter in. Mzee Juma's heart pounded when he saw her from a distance. He wondered if perhaps Amina too was like her husband. Could she also be a spirit hiding in human form? Determined to know, he walked toward her politely. Good morning, madam, he greeted, stretching his hand carefully. Amina returned the greeting with a soft smile and shook his hand. The moment their palms touched, Mzee Juma felt the truth. Her hand was warm, alive, and filled with human essence. She was no ghost. Amina was a real woman of flesh and blood. Relief and shock washed over Mzee Juma at once. That meant Amina truly had no idea about her husband's secret. She was living with a ghost without knowing it at all. How is your husband doing? Mzee Juma asked carefully. Amina smiled proudly. Oh, he is fine, always taking care of us. Her voice carried no suspicion, only love and gratitude. Mzee Juma leaned closer and lowered his tone. Your husband, he is not Tanzanian, right? He asked softly. Amina nodded. Yes, he's from Nigeria, and Namber State to be precise. Now it became clear to Mzee Juma that Amina was innocent. She believed everything her husband had told her without question. She was completely in the dark about his ghostly identity. Mzee Juma pressed further, testing her awareness. Have you ever followed him to Nigeria before, even once? Amina shook her head, saying no. I never thought of it. The priest's chest tightened with pity for the unsuspecting woman. She was raising children with a ghost and living in his mansion. Yet she had no clue that her husband's world was not of the living. The next morning, Amina walked into the school compound with Chindinma. She looked cheerful, unaware of the storm building around her life. At the same time, Mzee Juma arrived with his little son, Baraka. Their paths crossed near the gate, and they exchanged greetings. Mzee Juma studied her face closely, wondering how much she could bear. She was innocent, but he knew truth always found a way. After a few moments of casual talk, Mzee Juma lowered his voice. He leaned toward Amina, pretending to be light-hearted and playful. Then he spoke words that carried a hidden test within them. Why not trail your husband one day if he says he's going to Nigeria? He said it with a laugh, as though it was a harmless joke. But don't let him know. You know men cannot be trusted. Amina chuckled softly, shaking her head at the suggestion. Oh, my husband? He loves me too much to deceive me. Her voice carried innocence, but something in her eyes shifted. Mzee Juma smiled outwardly, but his heart raced inwardly. He had planted a seed of curiosity inside her mind. Sooner or later, that seed would grow into suspicion. Amina walked away still smiling, holding Chindima's hand tightly. But in her thoughts, her heart began to question silently. Why has he never taken me to Nigeria even once? The laughter of children filled the compound, but Mzee Juma's mind was restless. Would Amina act on his words or dismiss them as mere jokes? Only time would reveal the direction her curiosity would take. For the first time, Amina's trust in her husband cracked slightly. The question of his true identity began to whisper within her soul. And behind her gentle smile, doubt started to take root. And so, dear listeners, we end part 1 of this true life story. Will Amina trail her husband secretly to discover his shocking truth? Or will she remain blind to the ghost living beside her? What do you think, my people? Should Amina trail her husband to Nigeria? Will she uncover the secret Chika has been hiding all along? Comment your thoughts below. And if you want part 2 of this chilling true life story, let me hear you say part 2.